Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
And the headlines today, Tuesday, November 17th, the United Nations is calling for peace in the region of Western Sahara. The head of the WHO warns that now is not the time for complacency in the fight against COVID-19. And we continue to look ahead to the Economy of Francis event, taking place later this week. In the Vatican, I'm Christopher Wells. Our top story today, the United Nations has called for action in the Western Sahara, where a 30-year-long ceasefire has been broken, with both sides blaming one another and declaring war. Francesca Merlo tells us more.
The United Nations has confirmed fighting between the Polisario Front and Moroccan forces and launched an appeal to lower tensions. A claim by the pro-independence Polisario Front has led to the end of a 30-year-long ceasefire in Western Sahara. The Polisario Front has made claims that the Moroccan government, whom they consider occupiers of their territory, made an attack on the region, breaking a deal signed in 1991. The Polisario Front is a Sahrawi rebel national liberation movement aiming to end Moroccan presence in Western Sahara and is considered the legitimate representative of the Sahrawi people by the United Nations. Western Sahara, which is home to the Sahrawi nomadic ethnic group, is a long-disputed region stretching between Morocco, Mauritania and Algeria. Around 80% of the territory is administered by Morocco under the supervision of the UN peacekeeping mission. The Polisario Front is outlawed in the parts of Western Sahara under Moroccan law, and it is illegal to raise its party flag there. On Friday, Rabat's government announced a military operation to put an end to the state of obstruction resulting from these movements and re-establish freedom of civil and commercial movement. In response, a group of Sahrawi civilians and activists gathered near the town of Gergerat in the southwest corner of Western Sahara and blocked the only road connecting Morocco to Mauritania and the rest of Africa. Tensions have risen over the past weeks in the area, which is a United Nations designated buffer zone, following accusations of breaching the 3-decade-long truce from both sides. The UN has already made multiple initiatives to avoid an escalation, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said. He added the Secretary-General remains committed to doing his utmost to avoid the collapse of the ceasefire that has been in place since the 6th of September 1991, and he is determined to do everything possible to remove all obstacles to the resumption of the peace process. I'm Francesca Merlo.
Also from Africa, the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, said on Tuesday that the fighting in Ethiopia is leading to a full-scale crisis, with thousands of people fleeing into neighboring Sudan. Lydia O'Kane has this report.
A full-scale humanitarian crisis. That's how the United Nations Refugee Agency is describing the situation unfolding in Ethiopia. The UNHCR reported on Tuesday that more than 27,000 people have fled into Sudan. UN agencies said some 4,000 people a day, including men, women and children, were escaping the conflict. Jens Larke, spokesman of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, told a briefing on Tuesday there may be massive displacement inside Tigray. And that is, of course, a concern, and we try to prepare the best way possible. The unfolding crisis comes as Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, warned on Tuesday that a deadline for rebel northern forces to lay down arms had expired, paving the way for a final push on the Tigray region's capital in a 2-week conflict. The Prime Minister announced a military offensive on November the 4th against the regional government in Tigray in response to an attack by forces there. Each government regards the other as illegal after a months-long dispute. Most of the refugees arriving in Sudan have walked long distances or in some cases have swum to reach safety. Officials had already predicted an influx of at least 200,000 refugees into Sudan. UNHCR said it was working with Sudanese authorities to mobilize resources to provide life-saving assistance services to the new arrivals. In a tweet on Monday, Filippo Grandi, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, appealed for assistance to help the Sudanese government respond to the situation on its borders. There are concerns that this new influx of refugees will add to Sudan's economic and security problems. Ethiopians fleeing chaos back home were being moved to the Rakuba refugee camp in eastern Sudan. The head of the camp, Abdel Basset Wada, appealed for support, saying that although they had water, food was in short supply. I'm Lydia O'Kane.
Despite cautious but encouraging news about COVID-19 vaccines and potential new tools against the disease, the head of the World Health Organization is warning this is not the time for complacency. As Linda Bordoni reports, the organization is also calling for more solidarity and cooperation in the global fight against the pandemic.
Whilst welcoming news regarding the development of COVID-19 vaccines, the World Health Organization reiterated it is awaiting further data to be able to better assess the final efficacy and safety of these potential treatments. Biotech company Moderna announced on Monday that its experimental vaccine had shown a nearly 95% efficacy rate, according to interim results. This follows a recent similar announcement by pharmaceutical companies Pfizer and BioNTech. During a briefing on Monday, WHO Chief Scientist Dr. Soumya Swaminathan called the development encouraging. But she explained there are a series of considerations and processes that will deem whether the vaccines are efficient, safe, affordable and available on a large scale. Meanwhile, the head of the WHO, Tedros Ghebreyesus, said the UN agency is extremely concerned by the surge in cases in some countries, particularly in Europe and the Americas. In this moment, he said, when some governments have put all of society restrictions in place, there is once again a narrow window of time to strengthen key systems. He explained that a top priority at the moment is the need to ensure health workers who fall ill will receive proper coverage and that national health systems will be ready when safe and effective vaccines are rolled out. As the world battles a second wave of infections with over 55 million registered infections and more than 1,300,000 deaths worldwide, my message, Ghebreyesus said, is very clear. Act fast, act now, act decisively. I'm Linda Bordoni.
Elsewhere in world news, with Vietnam's central region battered by 7 tropical storms and typhoons in a little over a month, Caritas Vietnam has been reaching out to the storm and flood victims. At least 235 people have been killed in the Southeast Asian nation. Robin Gomes has more on that story.
Volunteers of Caritas Vietnam are visiting and assisting people in the central provinces who have had to face the brunt of 13 storms this year, with some of the worst flooding in more than 30 years. The latest of these typhoons, Vamco, made landfall in Vietnam on Sunday with winds of up to 150 kilometers per hour after leaving 67 people dead in the Philippines. According to Caritas, the social arm of the Catholic Church, rebuilding homes and recovering their livelihood are extremely important, apart from immediate survival needs. Farming, such as growing vegetables, rice, raising livestock and poultry, which is the mainstay in the central provinces, has been devastated. The new director of Caritas Vietnam, Father Joseph Ngo Si Din, led a delegation to the central provinces November 9th to 11th to survey the flooded areas. They first visited the Diocese of Hue and its 2 adjoining provinces, talking to families and providing them material and spiritual support. Father John Nguyen Huy Thuan, director of Caritas Ha Tin, said priests were actively involved in bringing food and relief to the affected people and moving them to safer places. Temporary shelters have been built to accommodate 25 families. The social arm of the Catholic Church assists people in rebuilding their lives, repairing damaged houses, and building new homes for families who have lost theirs. It also provides people and families with seeds, livestock, water filtering systems, and finance for school children. Caritas discussed ways to come up with concrete plans or projects to rebuild the lives of people regardless of their religion. Father Din has urged Catholics to help every person in need. We hope that the people most affected by these storms, be they Catholic or not, will get some relief, the Caritas director said. I am Robin Gomes.
The Archbishop of Washington, D.C. has welcomed the Vatican's McCarrick report regarding his disgraced predecessor, former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. Cardinal-elect Wilton Gregory said in a statement released on Monday that the Church has taken a step forward in ecclesial accountability. Devin Watkins has more.
In a statement released on Monday, Cardinal-designate Wilton Gregory responded to the McCarrick report, which details the Church's knowledge, decision-making process, and investigation regarding former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. He served as the Archbishop of Washington from January 2001 until May 2006. His successor since 2019, Cardinal-elect Gregory, said he began reading the 461-page report with keen personal interest to understand how the Archdiocese of Washington would be portrayed. But he noted the report is not about any specific diocese. He said it is about unconscionable human violation and the pain that too many people endured at the hands of a deceitful man. Cardinal-elect Gregory said the McCarrick report must be read through the eyes of the survivors and their loved ones. He expressed shame and anger for the dark corners of the Church which it revealed. It pushed into sunlight a culture that has too often served not to build up our cherished Catholic Church, but to undermine it, he said. He also said the Church's leaders have too often failed to understand, acknowledge, respond to, and prevent the damage done to innocent faithful, both minors and adults. The current Archbishop of Washington promised that his administration would continue to support the victims of sexual abuse and ensure safe environments for all. As I read the Vatican text, I felt such deep sorrow for those who should have been able to rely on the ministers of Christ's Church to protect and respect them, said Cardinal-elect Gregory. But, he said, the Church has taken a step forward, albeit much delayed, in looking honestly at both this particular case and at the future of ecclesial accountability. He added that healing the Church's integrity will require time, transparency, contrition, prayer, and reconciliation. The Archbishop of Washington concluded his statement asking for God's mercy for himself and for all bishops. I'm Devin Watkins.
The Economy of Francis is a really innovative event, says Si Chun Lam, one of the young people participating in the event, which is taking place virtually at the end of this week. In an interview with Vatican News, he says Pope Francis is hoping that the young economists, entrepreneurs, and change-makers, as well as some of the world's leading minds who have been invited to take part in the event, will come up with some ideas for the global economy that serves all humanity and all creation. Ahead of the event, Si Chun spoke about some of the ideas his group will be proposing.
Our three best ideas, interestingly, we ended up with one proposal linking into each of the encyclicals, really. It's about how we can really invest in relationships, invest in spending that time to build and nurture relationships to create the flourishing new global economy where everybody can take part. The first one was that we're actually inspired by, and this is going to sound a bit strange, but we're inspired by penguins. Why penguins? Because they're able to build sustainable colonies that don't just survive, but they thrive in the most inhospitable and challenging environments. And that actually teaches us as humanity a bit of a lesson about how we can build thriving small to medium cities where we can be better connected to each other and also to creation.
That was Si Chun Lam, one of the participants in the Economy of Francis event. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, and to hear this broadcast as a podcast, you can visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. Many thanks this afternoon to our producers and our sound engineers in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Christopher Wells.